Invincible, a popular comic book series created by Robert Kirkman and adapted into an animated television show, has captivated audiences with its compelling narrative, complex characters, and thought-provoking themes. And spoiler alert, a lot of fans seem to have mixed feelings. Some think that the show is better from what they have seen so far, stating, "I only have minor gripes with some of the decisions in the show. Overall, I think the show is better than the issues it adapts, but moving forward we will have to see how the show adapts iconic moments. The parts that have been adapted so far have been an improvement over the comics. However, the show hasn't gotten to the good stuff yet, so I would say the comics are better at this point in time, though that is likely to change as more seasons release." Others stated a lot of the writing/story/characterization is better in the show, but visually the comics art is miles ahead of the show. I prefer the comics overall more and more as we are getting into season 2. But I love the show and enjoy it more because I have read the comics. I'd say roughly on par. I think the comics do a lot better, but seeing things actually move in action is always hard to top. While the TV show largely stays faithful to the source material, there are distinct differences that set it apart from the original comics. This video aims to explore the divergences between the show and the comics, examining how these differences shape the storytelling, characterization, and overall impact of the narrative. Bulletproof joining the Guardians. In the comics, Bulletproof joined the Guardians after the Flaxen mishap. He was deemed as strong as Nolan and as fast as Red Rush, but that is as far as it went. We didn't really get an introduction to him and just saw Monster Girl hitting on him in an invasive manner. In the show, Bulletproof has a lot more ego. He is all about the job at hand, but he throws several shots at Rex. It teases a battle to see who's the true alpha in the crew. In addition, it keeps Monster Girl's focus on Robot's human form, Rudy, and doesn't make her a harassing creep. Speaking of the Flaxen mishap, our next difference is seen with Cecil's deal with Robot. In the comics, the Flaxen invasion was very mishandled and Cecil demoted Robot and even threatened to fire him. It left Robot on a probation of sorts. In the show, Cecil has Immortal as the leader like the comics did, but he's gentler with Robot. He knows Robot is a genius and that he can't alienate allies with the threat of the Viltrumite Empire and Omniman's return looming. It's a kinder demotion that still has Robot feeling important. The Mauler twins' prison break. The Mauler twins were in one prison cell in the comics. Angstrom opened a portal and quickly got them to his base so that they could build him a machine to connect to all his variants' minds. In the TV show, they're in separate cells arguing over the quality of food. Angstrom creates 2 rifts and baits them over. Also, the show gives the twins a deal. Angstrom offers them a world they could remake as they see fit. The comics never had any pact, which made it weird that they'd just go along as Angstrom's henchmen. Knowing their selfish ways, it would stand to reason they would want payment. Olga and Debbie. In the comic, after everything that happened and Nolan fled, a depressed Debbie started drinking. She often met up with the lawyer, Claire, who helped with her inheritance. As random as this friendship was, it was quickly booted. Invincible's bleak Season 2 opening has Claire being replaced by Olga. Her husband, Red Rush, was one of the heroes Nolan killed in Season 1. This builds a more personal bond as she relates to the trauma and can help Debbie. However, Olga does offer up some drugs, causing Deb to wonder if Olga is indeed a friend. This causes even more paranoia in Debbie, leaving a young Mark struggling to pick up the pieces. The Immortals hook up. In the comics, Rex witnessed duplicate Kate cheating on him at the Guardians base. Fans didn't see what he saw, though. Readers learned of it all when Rex constantly complained. More details would emerge after Immortal went public, although he and Kate were wary since there was a huge age gap. The show doesn't hold back with its change, having Rex see them emerge from the shower together. It's hilarious as he thought he could still get with her, only to have Kate chide him for being an immature person. Notably, this scene remixes how we've caught a cheating Rex and the Kates in Season 1. This delightfully gives Rex some karma, especially as Immortal and Kate have no problem flaunting their hookup in front of him. Mark's underwater marriage. In the comics, Queen Aquaria of Atlantis tried to marry Mark after Nolan killed her king in the original Guardians. Mark ended up in a fight against a kaiju to prove his worth, setting up the Queen's assistant to help him. This scheme allowed the assistant to become the champion the Queen picked as her new consort. The show drops the storyline completely. The assistant isn't a factor at all. In the TV series, the Queen just wants Mark to battle the creature because she hates the concept of Viltrumites. She doesn't entertain any marriage arc at all. The show also adds in 2 key cuts, Mark helping the Atlanteans when the monster gets loose, and Cecil firing rockets at the beast from the surface to aid Mark. To top it off, the creature's design is different. While Cecil initially didn't seek to find loopholes for Mark's visit the way he did in the comic. Mark's University. The comics had Cecil using his power and influence to fix things so Mark could go to university. He missed a lot of coursework. The series alters this as Mark gets into the same university as Amber, and he does so on his own merit. This builds their romance and proves to Amber he wants to be with her. In the comics, by contrast, they went to separate colleges, which created drama and suspicions about infidelity. Another notable change to this arc comes with Cecil not offering Mark and Debbie money, which helped to make them whole again. Mark and the Guardians. In the comics, Cecil brings Mark into the Guardians, but it does not go well. He didn't care about Mark's grief. It felt thin because of the beat-down Mark got at the hands of his father, which had the world distrusting him. Season 2 of Invincible reworks this with a dash of pragmatism, as Cecil doesn't want to recruit Mark yet. Mark even gets angry at a diner with Cecil, teasing maybe he does have that Nolan edge in him. Cecil does cave and hire him later in the episode to tend to the Mauler twins in Angstrom, but he remains skeptical. Darkwing's arc. In Invincible issue number 21, Mark visits Midnight City, which was plunged into eternal darkness. He had to fight off Darkwing's sidekick, Nightboy, who grew bitter after Nolan killed his mentor. Nightboy was now killing people in the city to keep order. The show changes this arc by giving the city an origin. The darkness is due to the Midnight Magician's curse. Additionally, Nightboy is hearing voices, showcasing a more sympathetic angle of mental health. Lastly, Mark's dark side emerges a bit more as he threatens and knocks out Nightboy. He hides this part of the mission from Cecil, hinting at a tragic fallout to come and a possible civil war with Immortal. The comic didn't have Mark pretending to be as vicious as Omniman or knocking Nightboy unconscious. The show seems to be feeding the idea that Mark has some of Nolan's dark tendencies. Mark's fight with Doc Seismic. In the comics, the Guardians were the ones to defeat Doc Seismic and his magma monsters. The TV series has Mark doing it alone. This makes Mark look stronger, leaving Cecil wondering if he'll be as dangerous as Omni-Man someday. The location has changes as well. The TV version of the fight takes place at the Washington Monument, doubling down on how Seismic loves smashing national treasures, especially after Invincible Season 1's brawl at Mount Rushmore. The show adds in extra levity as Mark ends up damaging the place, leaving Cecil annoyed he has to spend funds to fix it. It creates banter with him and the boss, while suggesting the Global Defense Agency is keeping extra tabs on Mark's powers. Mark and Amber's Paris trip. In the comic, Mark took Eve to Paris for a romantic dinner. The TV series brings this up chronologically, but it's Mark and Amber. Also, they're actually at the imitation Eiffel Tower in Las Vegas. Mark doesn't want to fly Amber to Europe as he's afraid the journey will harm her, plus it'll interfere with their job schedules. The TV series all about celebrating graduation, cementing how solid Mark and Amber are as a couple. The comics had them visiting Eve in Africa to do this, creating the weird love triangle. This Africa visit is remixed in this episode as well, as William joins them to discuss what everyone's plans are for the summer in a more platonic sub-arc. The Lizard League is beaten. In the comics, Russ the Shapesmith beat down the Lizard League by turning into all the Guardians. He then reappears 4 issues later, mimicking a Mauler twin and helping take down Seismic's monsters. It left the Immortal impressed and eager to hire this one-man army for the Guardians. The series alters this drastically as the Guardians and Shapesmith don't fight Seismic's Legion. They do fight the Lizard League, which is where Immortal wants to hire him. The Shapesmith only imitates Rex, not the other members, when fighting the terrorists. Also, while Immortal backs their new recruit, Invincible's robot wonders if they should rush to accept someone they know nothing about. Earth and the Sequids. In the comics, the astronaut Russ Livingston was replaced by a Martian after a trip to Mars went awry. The alien returned to Earth impersonating Russ at NASA. He pretended to be the Shapesmith and joined the Guardians as their take on DC's Martian Manhunter. Notably, his NASA arc was relatively tame. In the comic, he just had his superiors asking him about the moisture content of the Red Planet. Season 2 of Invincible changes this as NASA is working with other politicians. They're trying to get a nervous Russ to help them plan a revenge mission and attack the sequels there, not realizing he's an alien. Alternate reality massacre. The comics had Nolan and Mark attacking a resistance base in an alternate reality. Nolan squashed the Immortal's head while Mark sliced Robot in half and also crushed his head. The series rejigs this with Mark and Nolan teaming up on the Immortal in the sky. Nolan cuts his hand and head off, which Mark then crushes before the remains drop to Earth. They then crush Robot in a much different manner when they hit the lair. The biggest change comes with Adam Eve being added to the scene. Mark seems to snap her neck, but he really paralyzes her as he still loves her. Now, he can keep her as his pet in a toxic arc that reiterates how devious some Invincible variants can be. To top it off, Mark's speech here is more egotistical, plus the rebels don't have weapons to hurt Nolan. Some fans also think that the tone is different. One fan wrote, "The show is more dramatic, which I think improves it." For example, Mark getting beat by Battle Beast was kinda played off as a joke in the comic. He's all mangled up but gives a thumbs up to say he's okay in a quick comedic moment, and then he's fine right after. Omniman's betrayal was also much more dramatic. The TV show delves deeper into the lives and motivations of supporting characters, offering a more comprehensive understanding of their journeys. By expanding upon the source material and providing additional context, the show enriches the emotional depth and complexity of the characters, forging stronger connections with the audience and breathing new life into familiar personalities from the comics. Visual interpretation and artistic style. The transition from comic book illustrations to animated visuals introduces a distinct visual interpretation and artistic style in the TV show. While the core aesthetic of Invincible is preserved, the animation medium allows for dynamic action sequences, vibrant character designs, and cinematic storytelling techniques that augment the impact of key moments. This departure from the static images of the comics imbues the TV show with a heightened sense of visual spectacle, enhancing the immersive experience for viewers. Expanded storylines and subplots. In its adaptation, the TV show may expand on certain storylines and explore additional subplots that were not as prominent in the original comics. By delving into these new narrative threads, the show offers fresh perspectives and narrative arcs, enriching the overall tapestry of the Invincible universe. These expanded storylines contribute to a more expansive and multifaceted storytelling approach, presenting audiences with a broader array of interconnected narratives and thematic explorations. Tone, themes, and cultural relevance. While the core themes and tone of Invincible remain consistent across both mediums, the show may emphasize certain aspects or themes differently, catering to the nuances of the television format and resonating with contemporary audiences. Additionally, the adaptation may update or revise cultural references to align with modern sensibilities, ensuring that the show remains relevant and engaging for a new generation of viewers. In conclusion, the TV show Invincible distinguishes itself from the comics through a series of deliberate departures that enrich the storytelling, characterization, and visual presentation. These differences, while divergent from the source material, contribute to a compelling and immersive adaptation that honors the spirit of the original comics while offering a fresh and dynamic interpretation for both longtime fans and newcomers to the Invincible universe.